Hello, welcome to the video presentation for completing your financial package. First, I would like to highlight the key dates outlined in the Elections Act. There are 4 key dates. Copy of Form 2-5 and all unused tax receipts, spoiled tax receipts, and the Elections Nova Scotia copy of issued tax receipts must be returned to Elections Nova Scotia by June 29th. Your complete financial package, including the audit report and supporting documentation, must be submitted to Elections Nova Scotia by August 28th. Form 2-6 and supporting documentation is due 1 month after receipt of your final reimbursement of election expenses. If you were not entitled to a reimbursement, this report is due 2 months after your financial package was submitted. Details of any outstanding loans must be filed by March 31st for 2 years. It is important to remember that a $50 per day fine is levied for late filing. There are a number of forms and other supporting information that are required to be submitted with your audited financial package. The forms are required to be submitted even if the form is not applicable. Please note nil form on any forms that are not applicable to your campaign. The required forms and other information are Form 2, Candidates' financial statements and supporting schedules. Form 2-3, Summary of financial activity. Form 2-3A, Monetary contributions and fundraising events. Form 2-3B, Donation in kind. Form 2-3C, Transfers to and from registered party or EDA. Form 2-3D, Loan or line of credit calculation of interest benefit. Form 2-3E, Details of election and non-election expenses. Form 2-3F, Summary of election expenses. Form 2-4, Candidate balance sheet. Form 2-5, Report respecting tax receipts for candidate. Audit report if election expenses exceed $500. Originals of all bank statements, invoices, receipts, or other vouchers, including auditor's invoice, loan agreements, and other relevant information. Form 2-6, Notification of disposal of excess contributions. All supporting documentation regarding the disposal. These forms may be required if your campaign participated in fundraising activities. Form 5, Statement of fundraising revenue and expenses. Form 5-1, Statement of fundraising, Part 2. A separate form is required for each fundraising event held. Form 2-5, Report respecting tax receipts for candidate. As noted earlier, this form and supporting documentation is due 30 days after the election. This form must be signed by the official agent and a copy submitted when the tax receipts are provided to Elections Nova Scotia by June 29, 2017. You should provide a copy of this form as part of your financial package that is submitted to your auditors, as an audit opinion on this form is required. This form provides a reconciliation of the tax receipts received from Elections Nova Scotia to those issued, spoiled, and unused, and returned to Elections Nova Scotia. Part 1 of the report provides details on the tax receipts provided to you. This part should have been completed when you received the tax receipts after the candidate was officially nominated. Part 2 has 3 sections to provide the reconciliation of the tax receipts. Issued, which is a summary of the tax receipts issued for valid monetary contributions. Cancelled or voided, a summary of tax receipts that were used but not issued for whatever reason. And unused, summary of tax receipts unused and returned in whole to Elections Nova Scotia. Form 23D, loan or line of credit. This form may be nil for many candidates, but still must be submitted with the package, and the form must be clearly identified as a nil form. Even if the loan or line of credit has been paid off before the end of the campaign, the details associated with the loan must be provided. Section 1. The first section of the form must be completed and provides details regarding the lender and any guarantors of the loan. The loan could be provided by a financial institution or an individual. It is important to note that Section 215(8) of the Act states that an individual may guarantee a loan up to a maximum contribution of $5,000 less any contributions that individual has made during the calendar year to the party or EDA. For example, if a person has made a contribution to the party for $500, this individual may only guarantee or lend the campaign $4,500. Section 2. In this section, you must provide the details of all transactions associated with the loan. In this example, the campaign used $2,000 from the line of credit on May 10th and made a payment of $1,000 on May 29th. Section 3. This section relates to the calculation of interest benefit and is only required if the benefit is greater than $50. If the loan or line of credit is with a financial institution, then there is no benefit calculation necessary. An interest benefit occurs when an individual has made a loan to the campaign and does not charge interest on the loan or charges interest at a rate below market value. The interest must be calculated if over $50 and reported on this form and be carried forward to 23B, donations in kind. If the loan remains unpaid at the time of the financial report submission, additional disclosure would be required when submitting Form 2.6. If the loan remains unpaid by the end of 2017, additional reporting and disclosure is required by March 31st, 2018. If your candidate had a loan associated with the campaign, you should read Section 215 of the Act, Section 14 and Appendix D of the Official Agent's Handbook, and the Information Guide on Loans on the Elections Nova Scotia website. Form 23A, Monetary Contributions. This form is used to provide the required disclosure of monetary contributions on the Elections Nova Scotia website in accordance with the Act. The civic address and postal code are not disclosed on the website but must be included on this form. A P.O. box cannot be used as the civic address. Any cumulative contribution of $200 or more must be shown separately on this form. For example, Sam Wilson contributes $150 on May 20th via a fundraising event and also contributes $150 on May 25th to the campaign. The total contribution is greater than $200 and must be shown separately on the disclosure form. In another example, Susan Smith contributes $10 on May 18th and again on May 20th. The total contribution is less than $200 and therefore separate disclosure is not required. Susan's contribution would be included with other cumulative contributions less than $200 at the bottom of the form. The total amount from this form will be carried forward to Form 2-3. If you have access to Excel, it is suggested that you use the Excel template. Form 2-3B, Donations in Kind. This form may be nil for many candidates, but still must be submitted with a package, and the form must be clearly identified as a nil form. In this case, we have shown this form as not applicable so that you have an example of what is expected for all forms that are nil. This form is used to provide disclosure for non-monetary donations. There is an annual exemption of $50. That is, if the cumulative market value of the non-monetary donation is less than $50, no disclosure is required. As a reminder, if there was an interest-benefit calculation determined on Form 2-3D that was greater than $50, this amount must be disclosed on Form 2-3B. Similar to Form 2-3A, this form is used to provide the required disclosure of contributions on the Elections Nova Scotia website. For example, Susan Jones makes a cake which she donates to the campaign for fundraising purposes with an estimated value of $25. This is the only non-monetary donation Susan makes during the year. As the cumulative value is less than $50, there are no reporting requirements. If this was the only non-monetary donation received by the campaign, a nil form would be submitted. If Susan makes 10 cakes for one event, the estimated value of this non-monetary contribution would be $250. As a result, disclosure on Form 2-3B will be required in the same format as noted in the discussion on Form 2-3A. Form 2-3C, Statement of Transfers to and from Registered Party and Electoral District Association. There are two main sections to the form. The first section of the form is used to record transfers received from the party or the EDA. The second section of the form is used to record transfers made to the party or the EDA. Each section is divided into 5 parts. For each transfer received or made, ensure the date is noted and the value received is noted in the appropriate box. The totals will be transferred to Form 2-3. Form 2-3E and 2-3F, Details and Summary of Election and Non-Election Expenses. Form 2-3E will be the most detailed form of the package. Ideally, as the campaign progressed, this form would have been kept up to date. Receipts, invoices, vouchers must be clearly identified in the file and easy to trace to this form. Failure to have a well-organized file will result in delays in processing the reimbursement of election expenses. In some cases, the file may be returned to you for further work. Receipts, invoices, vouchers must also provide sufficient documentation to determine the nature of the expenditure, when it was occurred, and what was provided. If these documents do not provide sufficient information, they will not be permitted to be claimed as reimbursable election expenses. Care should be taken to ensure that vendor suppliers have provided all invoices for services prior to submitting the return to your auditors and Elections Nova Scotia. The Act requires that vendors and suppliers submit their invoices to the official agent no later than 30 days after Election Day. Should additional invoices be paid after the submission of your financial package, you may be required to file an amended Form 23F. This form has a number of columns and are as follows. Column 1, document number. The document number noted here must correspond to the receipt invoice in the file. Ideally, this document number would correspond to the check issued for that expense. Column 2, date of expenditure. This is the date the expenditure was incurred, not the date it was paid. Column 3, payee name. An example, Signs R Us, Subway, Bell, Eastlink, etc. Column 4, description of the expenditure. An example, mileage reimbursement must be accompanied by the template or log. Purchase of signs, office supplies, etc. Column 5, paid expenses. Fill in the amount paid. Even if the check remains uncashed, you have paid for the expense. Column 6, unpaid and uncontested. If you have incurred an expenditure but have not issued a payment for the expenditure, use this column. For example, the audit fee would be included in this column as you would not have paid the audit fee when you submitted your package to your auditors. Column 7, discounts, including used signs. Most likely, there would not be many items in this category. If the candidate is running for re-election, an amount for signs used from previous elections would be included in this column. Column 8, contributed services. Again, most likely there would not be many items in this category. Column 9 to 15. These are the columns used to record the amount incurred that are considered election expenses. There are 7 categories. Please refer to the guide for details, descriptions, and examples. For expenses, worker remuneration, publicity and advertising, travel, functions, other, personal expenses of candidate. Column 16. This column represents non-election expenses incurred during the writ period and after the election. Column 17. Any non-election expenses incurred prior to the writ period should be noted in this column. In this example, document 16, reimbursement for petty cash total $46.41 and is allocated to columns 9, 10, 11, and 13. After this form is completed, total all columns. Totals for columns 9 to 15 are transferred to Form 23F in the first section, lines 1 to 7. Totals for columns 7 and 8 are transferred to Form 23F in the second section of the form, lines 8 and 9. Finally, totals for columns 16 and 17 should be transferred to the other category, line 11. Form 23F, as received, will be scanned and posted on the Elections Nova Scotia website within 10 days upon receipt. It is suggested that you ensure this form is accurately completed and does not contain any other information than that required. On the Elections Nova Scotia website, there are optional templates that you may use to ease reporting on this schedule. They include petty cash, travel cost, and labor. Form 2.3, Summary of Financial Activity. Most of the figures on this form are obtained from all the forms completed. The form is referenced to assist you in determining where you can locate the summary figures. There are 3 items that are not obtained from the other forms as they represent reimbursements from Elections Nova Scotia. Nomination fee reimbursement. If you are submitting your financial package on time and are providing proof that the list of electors has been destroyed, the candidate is entitled to receive a refund of the $200 nomination deposit. Fill in $200. Audit fee subsidy. This fee provides assistance towards the cost of the audit up to a maximum of $782. The signed audit report and the audit invoice must be included with your package to receive this reimbursement. Fill in the invoice amount up to the maximum of $782. For example, the cost of the audit is $500. This is the amount that would be noted on this form. Another example is if the cost of the audit is $1,000, put $782 in that line. Election expenses reimbursement. If your candidate has received 10% or more of the valid votes cast, the campaign is eligible for reimbursement of paid election expenses up to a maximum amount. Fill in the lesser of the amount of election expenses incurred or the candidate reimbursement. Note that the candidate reimbursement is determined by the number of electors in the electoral district, and thus the amount varies by district. This amount can be located on the Elections Nova Scotia website. At the end of the form, the net impact of the activities of the campaign are reflected in the net excess or shortfall figure. This net excess or shortfall will be transferred to Form 2.4. This form must be signed and dated by the official agent. Form 2.4, Candidate's Balance Sheet. This form presents the assets and liabilities of the campaign. This form must balance. Total assets must equal total liabilities plus surplus deficit obtained from Form 2.3 on the line labeled excess. There are a few key items to note. Cash. This amount is not the cash in the bank account as of the date of filing the report, but rather the reconciled cash amount at the date of filing. For example, the bank account may have a balance of $1,750 as of the date of filing, but there is one check that was issued for $250 that remains outstanding as of that date. The reconciled cash figure is $1,500. $1,750 less the $250. Accounts receivable from Elections Nova Scotia. See the discussion on Form 2.3. these amounts should agree. Accounts payable. This figure represents amounts for expenses incurred but not yet paid. For example, the audit fee would not be paid at the time the report is given to the auditors and therefore would be recorded here. Form 2. Candidates' financial statements and supporting schedules. This is the last form to be completed and submitted with the financial package. All sections of this form must be completed. The form must be signed and dated by the official agent and the candidate. When you have completed all the forms, submit the forms and all original supporting documentation, invoices, bank statements, loan agreements, etc. by August 28, 2017 to Elections Nova Scotia to avoid any penalties and non-compliance with the Act. Payments will be made in 4 installments. A letter will accompany each payment. Nomination deposit. Sent directly to the official agent when all the reports and information have been received. Election expenses. 75% sent upon receipt of reports and information after initial review has been conducted to ensure all items have been received and are in good form. Election expenses, 25%. Remaining amount sent after detailed review by Elections Nova Scotia. Audit fee subsidy, sent directly to the official agent when the final 25% of election expenses reimbursement is sent. In some cases, election expense reimbursements will be made to the party if an assignment agreement has been provided. If a penalty is levied, it will be deducted from your payment. Form 2.6, Notification of Disposal of Excess Contributions. This form is due to Elections Nova Scotia 1 month after you receive the final payment for reimbursement of election expenses, or 2 months after the candidate's expenses were filed if no reimbursement is payable. The form has a detailed description on the back of how to complete. However, a few key points are: the bank account of the campaign must be closed and proof submitted. Any excess funds must be transferred to any of the following 3: Electoral District Association of the candidate, Registered Party of the candidate, Elections Nova Scotia, with a check made payable to the Minister of Finance. This form must be signed and dated by the official agent. For most official agents, after Form 2.6 has been submitted, this is the end of the process and you will receive a letter. However, if there are any loans or line of credit outstanding, additional reporting requirements exist. Please refer to the website for further information. This concludes our presentation. Thank you for your service in the electoral process.